Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back for another round. Let me bring my mic over to me.
Questioning
Welcome back for another round of questioning constructs. Hope everybody's doing well. We are here. It's worth
present.
announcing. Present. Always worth announcing. Sometimes it's a feat for us to actually sit down and do this just because life is so busy. So shout out to us.
Yes.
Always
Oh.
like to give ourselves a small pat on the
hmm
back for actually trying to get this done. Um, but nevertheless, let's jump into what we've got for you guys today. So, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. This is John, by the way.
Oh my goodness. Listen, this is episode what? If you don't know who we are, all right? If this is your first introduction and you clicked on episode 16 for your first video, all right, you're a madman. You're a madman. All right. It could be. It could be. But anyway, Rebecca, go ahead.
Okay. So, did you hear that they're bringing or have brought dire wolves back?
I did. I actually looked into the claim too.
Yeah. So, apparently, um, they were working with some old data. Oh my gosh. All right. So they were working with some old data, DNA, and it's not 100% a replication of your like a clone because you need to have so much DNA in order to like piece the entire sequence together. So what they did was they used old DNA, but then they also um made some guesses looking at like close relatives. And so, I mean, it's one of the most closest that we're going to get until we actually have other, more complete DNA. Considering that DNA that is that old doesn't usually hold up, but one, I think that that's pretty cool. We just have some dire wolves running amok now.
Well, make sure to put quotation marks around dire wolves. I did some I did some research into this actually because I saw it. Everybody kind of got was in an uproar about it for a little bit, and I talked to my mom about it, and I brought up some scientific articles while talking to her actually. So I did look into this, and the claim is the fun claim, right? The fun claim is that we have dire wolves again. But realistically, what happened was that we took a large breed of dog, and we went ahead and spliced some traits of direwolves into them. So very, very, very far from direwolves. But the most interesting thing I found while looking into this was a quote that one of a peer reviewed reviewing scientist said on this. I forget his name specifically, so don't take my word for word on this. But basically, he reviewed the studies, he reviewed what was done, and he made a comment that I had not considered, which was, even if we did go ahead and take the idea of creating these genetic dire wolves, we could never have dire wolves in our environment simply because of the environmental roles that dire wolves and the environment that shaped dire wolves no longer exist.
Mm-hmm.
So, just by a force of nature, even if you were to bring back the species at a 99.9% rate, they more than likely would not function the way dire wolves functioned when they existed, which was something that I didn't even think about with not just the fact that what makes a thing, is not necessarily the genetic component or the thing it's built out of, but the environment it exists in, which is a reoccurring topic for us. The idea of who we are in society, and is it us who defines ourselves, and what's the interplay between our self definition and our self definition within society, and how society defines us. Um, so it was an interesting thing that, like we apply it to us, but I've never extended it out to animals. But it works the same way there too. Dire wolves just wouldn't work the same way in today's day and age as they
Mm-hmm.
did back in prehistoric times.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying actually leads into the question that I was going to have for you, but um, let me just quickly go back to how they made the dire wolves. So one of the ladies that I was listening to who was breaking down the scientific portion of it was saying that how you would actually bring back a species is the way that they did it, but they took liberties with the genetic code that they didn't have versus like um when you're creating a clone, you're taking something, a similar breed or mammal, taking out all, extracting. It's kind of the same thing we do with IVF, where you take all the DNA out of like an egg cell and then insert into that the DNA of the animal. So therefore, it's not going to have any. If you have truly replicated the entire DNA sequence for the animal that you're cloning, it should be exactly what you were cloning versus having any modifications. But I guess the DNA that they were working with from the dire wolf, it wasn't complete, which is why it's technically not bringing them back officially because they guessed at some of the DNA, I guess, strands that they maybe couldn't pick up with the older DNA. Um, so would be interesting to see, like, if we get more DNA to see how close they came. That would be, I think, really interesting. Um, but yeah, so it's not exactly bringing them back, but it's closer than I think that we probably would have gotten not having any DNA at all. But my question, because I always think about the animal and the environment, because you have like wolves, especially are or what they call keystone species, or it's either keystone or cornerstone, where you need apex predators environments. Otherwise, they actually just kind of self destruct and get out of balance. And so that's also something I always think about, like um, when we're thinking about reintroducing a species or even introducing it into a different environment. There's a lot of environmental cleanup that's going on. Like, for example, in New Zealand, they're cutting down a ton of trees right now because a lot of those trees were brought over from other countries and they aren't native. Or a lot of people way back when they traveled to New Zealand brought some of their pets. Some were like rabbits, and then they brought over, it was either like, I think it was weasels, to kill off the rabbits because the rabbits were eating the vegetation. And now they have a weasel population, and the weasels, so in New Zealand they have a lot of ground birds, and so instead of eating the rabbits or whatever they were supposed to do, they just started eating the bird eggs. And so they have one of the highest rates of loss in bird species in the world, um, because of that. And I could be getting the animals wrong, but essentially that's kind of how it happened. Like, we unfortunately brought things over, they brought another animal in to eat that, and then that affected their ecosystem. So my question to you
We've
is,
Oh, before you get to the
yeah.
question, I just want to interject a fun fact here.
Hmm.
We've experienced this ourselves with being able to bring uh, our the leaves from palm trees in Puerto Rico into the
Yeah.
U.S. where we couldn't. And I think we've mentioned it on the podcast before,
Hmm.
but this is a good
Hmm.
example of it.
Hmm.
The reasoning being it would have some adverse effect on our ecosystem here due to
Hmm.
some insects that we couldn't see.
Yeah. And that goes for when you're entering countries too. Like, when I went into New Zealand, you had to show, like, if you had any type of food, especially if you had hiking boots. I had to show them the bottoms of my hiking boots. Um, just different things like that, because it's not just the obvious like animals, it's plants, insects, and then of course like even bacteria and blights can make their way over on different things as well.
I also, well, I want you to ask your question first, but I pulled up an article from Georgetown University in regards to the dire wolves,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, and the idea of whether we can bring them back or not,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the not necessarily the process, well, essentially the process by which they did so. If you're interested in taking a look, but nevertheless, what is your question here?
So
Nevertheless, I've said a couple of times today.
nevertheless,
Yeah.
we're talking about quite complex topics. So my question, and this is something I always think about when they talk about like, ooh, like we found there have been some really cool discoveries lately, like finding a whole, I think it was like an ankylosaurus skin, or a spinosaurus skin. I think it was an ankylosaurus though. Um, the whole woolly mammoth that they found buried in ice. And then this, the latest with the dire wolves, or as close as we're gonna get right now. So I always think about like, where's the line? Like, is in somewhere are they trying to actually clone a woolly mammoth right now? Like that was my first thought when they found the whole woolly mammoth. It was a baby woolly mammoth. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It looks pretty cool. Um, Poor baby though. But anyways, so my question to you is, where do you think too far? Like, do you think it is at the dinosaur? Do you think it's at the saber-toothed tiger? Do you think that people have already tried and it just hasn't worked out, and so we just haven't heard about it? Because the other thing that was kind of surprising is the area for these dire wolves. It's like 70 acres or something, or like it's a large enclosure, like 100 acres or whatnot. So we still have parts of the world that you're never going to know what's going on. So where is too far for you? But where do you think that societally someone's like, we cloned a T-Rex, like, come see it? Where do you think that
Um,
line is? Or do you think there isn't a line as long as it's in an enclosure? Because we're so already used to the concept of zoos, and we have I don't I like a decreased awareness of that they're still wild animals with natural tendencies.
I feel like Jurassic Park has already answered this for us, to be honest. I feel
I
like
don't know, but in real life though, we watch these as movies and everyone's like, that would be so cool. Like, you really think that they're
the
not gonna
whole concept of the movie is look how cool it is until it's not cool. That's like the entire concept of Jurassic
But
Park.
how often do people replicate movies where people are like, that's so dumb, and someone does it anyways? That's what so when do you think the government steps in and was like, okay, maybe that was too far? I don't think it's
Um,
until someone actually gets hurt. I don't think it's going to start with the dinosaurs, but I can see them bringing back a woolly mammoth. I can eventually see them bringing back a saber tooth because it's close to tigers that we already have in zoos. Like,
this
you
is
really
a
don't think that they're going to try?
it's a really difficult question to answer because um I think that it's not something to be discouraged in its current form. Like even with this dire wolf thing, after looking at some of the research, 99.9% of the genetic sequence is actually large gray wolves. Is I forget what the specific term is for it, but I have it in the article. And I think the concept of splicing in things that we want to see
Hmm.
into animals and stuff, I think that's good. That's currently where our research is. I feel like that's cool. As far as cloning, that's a different conversation.
Hmm.
Cloning, I feel the line is pretty comfortably at, how do we feel about human cloning. Other than that, like, I'm almost positive, it's not that big of an issue. But it also depends on where you fall in the line of animal, uh, where you value animal life. For me, as somebody who's not a vegan, um, who's not going and marching for animal values, for many good reasons actually, but not to say that animals don't have certain intrinsic values that we should acknowledge. But I'm probably not the best one to make the argument here because I just don't see a problem with it. Like, Dolly was a cool experiment. And I'm referencing Dolly the sheep. They went ahead and cloned that sheep and made another Dolly. That's a cool experiment. That happened, what, like 20 something years ago?
They were in middle
Um,
school when that happened.
like, this stuff is pretty cool, and I'm sure it's only advanced, to this far. So if somebody wanted to go and create a woolly mammoth, like, by all means, if they could, then go ahead. I think, you know even with dinosaurs, like, the idea of having, like, bringing back a dinosaur is somewhat interesting because essentially it's a giant chicken. They're large feathered beasts, right? We have feathered beasts now, we just want a bigger. That's cool, that's interesting, but more than likely that's not an experiment that would be done in a wide sense. So even if it was something to be done, my guess is the implications would be, well, I have no idea what the implications would be. What if we do that and it also revives with it, or brings back with it some type of virus? The problem
Oh,
is we don't have any kind of understanding by which we can navigate the conversation. So, like, what I mean by that is, like, maybe that sounds like an interesting idea, the idea of maybe we bring back a virus, or maybe somebody who's a scientist hears that and is like, what do you mean? That could never happen because of the way this functions. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel so out of my depth with
trick
it.
plot. That's actually what caused all the die off of the dinosaurs. The meteor came after. No.
You never know. Like, maybe
Yeah.
even the suggestion that we bring back some kind of virus by bringing back, like, maybe that's so out of the realm of reality that, the suggestion is purely science fiction. Which is why I'm not, like, super comfortable giving a strong opinion on it. Would it be cool? Sure, the same way Jurassic Park is cool, like, like, as far as the dire wolf thing, even that one, I feel like I'm super out of my depth because, again, most people are running with the fact that they're dire wolves
Mm.
when they're 99% large wolf. We have those. They spliced in some genetic code to make them different than large wolves, which is really, really cool when you apply it to, like, extended things. Like, what do we want to do with chickens? Do we want to genetically modify chickens for a specific purpose? Do we want to genetically modify, you know, XYZ if we think there are certain traits that should have survived, you know?
Oh.
Um, so, like, that whole thing with like, what how would I best put forth my theory on this? I think if there are things that we can positively identify as traits that we would love to have for good reason, and we can make an argument for that reason, and people agree with that reason, then I think these experiments should take place. Do you get what I mean? Who knows
Mhm.
if like this experiment is the experiment that leads to us extending our livelihoods just because we played with some genetic sequence and we found, oh, in the creation of this new breed of wolf, we've also drastically extended its life, right? But again, I don't know whether I'm in the realm of science fiction or if I'm in the realm of science. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I was just curious where you thought the line was going to be, that either the governments
Play
or
God until havoc is wreaked. And here's my biggest reasoning why it's unlikely to have an effect on my life anytime in this lifetime. Maybe the next life if you believe in reincarnation, but until then, you want to be in Iceland and revive an ancient breed of super shark, that sounds like a cool thing for us to talk about. So, and that's all it's going to be. I'm never going to run into the super shark, right? I might have less sushi,
yeah.
but it's going to be something for us to talk about. So, as far as I'm concerned, any evil geniuses out there, take it as tacit approval. Be an evil genius. Go and develop something out of this world that people just don't understand the beauty of your science. By all means do it. Play God.
I think so. Here, let me. So I said like 100 acres. It's a 2,000 acre preserve, and they are trying to also bring back the woolly mammoth, which I think is really funny. But
These wolves are big. Like, make
yeah,
no mistake, like we're comparing them to dire wolves for a
yeah,
reason, right? Like that's the apt comparison, not just because we're taking things that genetically dire wolves or traits genetically dire wolves had, but these were already really large creatures. These gray wolves, already really large, and when we beefed them up, like, yeah, yeah.
okay. So they have 20 gene. I thought it was more that they had. They had 20 genes edited.
I don't blame you. Again,
Give them
everybody like, and
well.
if you look
So
at the sequence, it's 99.9% still
they
wolf.
share 99.5% of their DNA with gray wolves, but have 20 genes edited, giving them direwolf traits such as larger size and pale
Point
fur.
0.5. Okay.
Um, so yeah, they used CRISPR, which also came out or
Yeah.
I think that was
Dolly.
like yeah, Dolly.
Yeah.
Um,
But that
but
0.5% of dire wolf, like what does that look like now in terms
yeah,
of the wolf? But I think the more interesting question for me is like the conversation that gets had here, right? Because if you were to have a conversation with anybody, for the most part, they are going to be like, holy crap, dire wolves are back. We're going to go extinct because the dire wolves are going to run amok and it's
mhm,
Jurassic Park. When you look at the actual data, like, wait a second, these are wolves, right?
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
it's just the concept is so cool, and part of me almost wants to like approve of the idea of running around and saying like outright dire wolves, just because of the magic it sparks in people,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Like there's something to be said about that. Like,
Yeah,
in reality, this is still an obscenely magical thing that we've done,
mhm,
um but also in reality it is not the magical thing that people think it is. You know what I mean? So where do you draw the line in that?
yeah, yeah. And to your point, it is when something like this happens and you just see the end result that was successful. I think in its own right, it deserves to be called a dire wolf simply for the fact that, like you called out, like it's still impressive. And just reading about how they are trying to bring the woolly mammoth back, and where they're at right now is trying to grow. They used mice and made the mice grow like really long woolly hair. That's like
Yeah, I
one of the
read about
steps
that.
that
Yeah.
like we have to take. And then and to hear that they took DNA from a skull plus like a DNA piece that we had, and it takes that much work to get where we are now, where they manipulated 20 genes based on the DNA that they did have. Like
It is
seems
obscenely cool, but
yeah,
then the question becomes a question of like communication and language, right?
right. From a
Because it's
scientific
like,
perspective, not necessarily, but from a let's give you props and this is really cool and like spread awareness,
I
sure.
might say you went to the Olympics, but I'm not going to call you a gold medalist if you didn't win a gold medal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say that this, in my opinion, right? Like, I feel like and I read some article, I see some articles do one of two things. And I personally prefer one over the other. And
Hmm.
I read a couple when looking at this with my mom. Um, some of the articles that I saw are the ones that play up, the magical element of
Yeah.
we have dire wolves back in
Yeah.
our world, right? Which sounds really cool. And in fact, when I told my mom about this, that's what I said. I That's how I came across when I told her. I was like, "Yo, they brought them back. We have dire wolves." That's what I said,
Mhm.
right? Which is interesting from the contrast now, what that conversation looks like now after actually doing, some of the research. And I think it's just really, really like it's obscenely cool. And I think the credit should go to the scientists. Oh, my original point, the two different types of articles. Uh, One that plays up the idea that direwolves are back, and the other that says uh, dire wolf like traits splice into
Mhm.
wolves. And those are generally the two different articles I see. The reason I prefer one of the over the other is because you can guess which one is going to be a little more based in
Mhm.
what actually happened. And the thing that I think, while there is magic in like the idea of, oh, dire wolves are back, the thing that I think gets lost in the shuffle is exactly what you said, which I find interesting, is the amount of work these scientists did
Mhm.
in order to do that. Most
Yeah.
people heard direwolves are back and ran with that. Whereas if what got popularized was scientists were able to genetically modify these wolves,
Mhm.
right? People would look at that and be like, yo, scientists are doing their thing right now. And
Mhm.
while I prefer the idea of magic, I also prefer the conversation of look
Mhm.
at how amazing we as humans are.
Mhm.
Like we did that. But now the conversation is firmly in the fantastic. Do
Mhm.
you see what I mean?
Yeah, this is one of the few times where I didn't mind it because most of the articles had that as a title, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna read this," but immediately we're like, "Hey, this is what's going on," and like, not technically, but it's as close as we're gonna get. But I do wish that they would have. I would have been more interested to hear about the process of which, like, the whole scientific process of like how long it took them to get to this point. Because all of a sudden, the other reason why I'm like kind of okay with it is because that's a giant facility. And then to have done as much research as they probably did to get to this point, maybe some of the buzzwords and the funding is going to come from that. And, I it's a thin line, like, as long like,
It's
I
tough
always wish
because part of me
yeah.
wants to agree, but then
Hold on.
part of me thinks about how many scientific journalists are coming out to dispute that direwolves are back. When really it should be all scientists celebrating the fact that we had this information spliced. But now it's like we're playing this half and half game. And so like part of getting grants is being able to, speak to your scientific peers. And my worry, the concern with the fantastical is that some of that gets, again, diluted in its strength, um, just due to the fact that now you've got naysayers of an nth degree. Whereas if, again, one headline got popularized over the other, you probably wouldn't have that reaction, outright. But you can never account for populism.
Well,
Populism is just its own beast.
my worry is always, first and foremost, if we're ever doing any testing on animals, that the animals have the utmost care and consideration, which a lot of times probably is not the case. And you're going to treat your pet differently than an animal that you're probably using for scientific purposes, and I'm not okay with that. But if the public interest, if this continues to fund what is most important to me is like keeping the wolves fed and like the enclosure maintained and whatever else they need, because you also don't know what kind of sicknesses that they're going to run into, or how, like, you know disease is one, right, of bringing back a virus, but so is like mutations, and not fully understanding like how did that get passed down and or eradicated, eliminated with animals DNA changing. So, and that's not something happens and it's like, I don't know, like similar to bone cancer or something. That's not something that's
That's
affordable to treat. So I would much rather, if you're going to do something and the animal's the one that actually ultimately suffers at the end of the day, I sure, whatever. Like, make sure the money's coming to help support the animal. Or just don't do it if you don't have it, but that's not how science usually works. Um
I think that's kind of part of what I meant when I was talking about, like, my love of animals, right? Like, and how it's eh, like cool, like, but it's not like, for me if it took, I don't know, X amount of wolves, right? But you extend all dogs' lives at the end of the day,
mhm,
right? What do you place the number on,
yeah.
for that? Like, and so it's hard for me to say, because part of me, there is a part of me that feels, no, I'd be lying if I said that. I don't really hold feelings for random animals in the same way, actually. And I wonder if that's something that is isolated to me. Like, I wonder if, like, maybe that's a personal thing. Like, if I see a bird, I'm like, oh, cool, but I'm not gonna sit here, like, and if I see the bird hurt, right, I'm probably gonna want to take care of it, do something to help. I love those videos where a crow needed some help,
Yeah.
and now the crow is in love with the owner,
Yeah.
right? But I almost like that more, because the animal becomes a familiar, but not necessarily because of the animal and its of itself. I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes sense. It's
I
like the
can't.
bond is more interesting than the
No,
animal for me.
that makes sense. I don't know, since I was little, I remember this one time going on a walk, and I, like, stepped on some ants, and I was like, "Hi," like you're a little kid, and I just immediately felt so much guilt, and I just felt terrible, and
Funny,
I was like, "I can't." And so I don't, like, anytime I see a little insect too, I'm like, "Let me help you," like,
actually, it's so interesting because I'm the same way,
I
and
don't
I
even
have
pick
a
flowers.
similar I have a similar story. Do you remember there was a kid, and you'll remember him.
I just
Do you
like,
remember do you remember
"Can you say
Manny?
more?" Ben! Yes.
I don't know Ben, but I know Manny.
Wait, Manny. Okay, for some reason I thought you
Yeah.
said Ben, and I was like, "I remember Ben." Okay, Manny.
Manny
Yeah,
was a kid that I would walk home with occasionally with a group of friends, and I remember one time coming across one of those giant caterpillars. Um, have you ever seen, like, the really fat, really green
yeah,
ones?
They're so
Yeah,
cool. The
and
moth caterpillars, yeah.
yeah, I remember Manny jumping up and stomping it to all hell, and I felt disgusted, absolutely disgusted. And For me, like, oh, like I feel that feeling now, even as I'm
I
talking about it. It
know.
was
Aw.
disgusting to me, like a disgusting act, like a robbery of life, like. But this is just a bug, right? But like disgusted. And I still feel that way now. But even with me saying that, like, I am the guy who's gonna go help the spider and like lead the spider out. In fact, I like spiders. I remember I had a roommate who really hated spiders, but I was like, "Yo, you don't understand. Spiders do their thing.
Yeah, they're
Those are
cool.
the housemates you want."
Yeah.
So I'm the guy who helps the spiders. I'm gonna catch the thing, slide a paper under the cup, and let it go. Like I am that guy, but at the same time, when I think about chipmunks, if I had one that was hurt and on my doorstep, I would take care of it. If you told me 1,000 chipmunks died because they were scientifically experimented to get a particular trait out of chipmunks, I don't feel anything. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I wonder what that would be called because I don't know, I feel it for everything. But there are certain times where I'm like, "Oh, that's such a massive
Animal
red
sociopathy.
Let me tell you a fun story about spiders though while we're on this because I agree with you. I love spiders too. Um, just like we have on the East Coast, it's called a brown recluse.
Yep.
It's not just on the East Coast. So my dad's house, actually I have two stories for you. The first one's a little quicker, so I'll tell you that one. So my dad's house, in the basement it always had insects, little crickets, spiders. Sometimes the spiders would get really big. And so we had brown recluse down there. We also had other brown random spiders. And so it got to a point. So I have three brothers. The middle brother moved down there. And then when he left the house, the youngest brother moved down there. And so the youngest brother was moving in, and the middle brother hands him a bat, a metal baseball bat, and goes, "Here, you're going to need this." And my younger brother's like, "Why? What for?" And he goes, "You'll find out." And so my brother says, "I wake up at night and sometimes there's just things crawling and bam, like with the bat." So when we had my mom's cat, the rule was the cat stayed in the basement, of course, with my brother who was still living down there. And we were trying to get her to be, a hunter when she first came. And all she would do is just stare at the little like spiders, like this big, just crawled across the floor and we'd like bat it and finally she would like pet it, but she's like, I don't want to kill. So here's my other original spider story. I'm in college and this kid, I was like half paying attention, but I was like sitting 3 rows back. And then the row in front of me, there were two people talking. It was a girl and a guy. And the guy, I remember he came in on crutches with his it wasn't a full cast, but like his leg was all bandaged up. Like it was one of those half casts, the legs bandaged, and he was using crutches. And I'm like studying my notes and I hear them talking. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, man, those brown recluse, they'll get ya." He's like, "You want to see a picture?" And in my head, something was like, "Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right." He has his leg propped up on the desk. And I see that he shows the phone. It's this big. He had a chunk out of and then I realized that the reason why he's in his cast is because he had a chunk this big, about 2 inches wide and like an inch deep, that was taken out of his leg. And so here's a fun story about brown recluse spiders. Their venom is actually deteriorates your body. And so if you don't get to a doctor, it's just going to keep eating and eating and eating away at your body. And so this kid got bit at night, didn't go to the doctor, I guess didn't wake up. And so by the time he went to the doctor the next day, they had to actually like cut out
Take
his
a
leg
chunk. Oh, that's
because it was
crazy.
all dead. And I'm sitting
Yeah.
there looking at this picture and I was like, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's
Oh my
crazy.
God. And then let me tell you something even crazier. First place I moved out to, this was probably a couple years later. I'm talking to, and guys, still love spiders. They're not going to harm you usually. Like in my entire
House
life,
spiders probably
house,
aren't.
no.
Yeah.
But even the brown recluse, like we've never had any experiences that, it was just that one. But then, okay, so first place I moved out to from my dad's house, we had to get a plumber over to fix something with the sink. And so I'm just chatting with him, and he's one of those people, and the first thing he says to me, he goes, "You have any hobbies or any what do you say, like evil hobbies?" And I'm like, "What?" And so I guess he considered hunting his evil hobby, but he would go and hunt boar and stuff, which in a lot of states in the US, like sometimes that's needed because talking about creatures that have gone out of control and are doing a lot of destruction to the habitats shouldn't be there. But somehow we got from that story to he told me he was camping one time and got bit by a brown recluse. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was telling him that story and I was like, so, good thing. I guess you got to the hospital in time. He goes, nah, I never went to the hospital. I'm like, what? And I was like, but the venom just keeps eating through your skin. And he goes, yeah, and just cut it out. You'll be fine. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I just took a knife and, just cut around it and then just,
That's a man's man
and
right
I was
there.
like, what are you talking about?
That's a man's man right
I'm
there.
just staring at him
I
again.
could never.
And he pulls out his hand and he goes, look, you see, it's like right there. And I'm like, what? I was like, okay, well, how do you know you haven't, like, you've gotten all of it that it's not going to travel? Shh. Hey, shh. Hold on. Hold on. Anyways, so he's pointing his hand. He goes, look, you see, it's right here. And I was like, that's
Yeah,
freaking
no,
wild. Like,
that is pretty crazy.
how do
Yeah,
you, I would just be afraid that I didn't get it all and it's traveling in your bloodstream now and like, but maybe their toxin doesn't work that way. But
I yeah, I don't know. Either way, I'd be fucking, excuse my language, terrified. I'd be absolutely terrified. I've come across a couple of black widows in my time, but that's about it. Nothing crazy. I've come across daddy long legs,
oh,
and
see, I like them. Their
I've
mouths are too
held them.
small to bite you,
Yeah, they
even
can
though they're
pinch
like one of the
you,
most
but they
toxic.
can't bite you. Yeah.
They can
Um,
bite you?
Pinch you. So like
Oh,
their mandibles are big enough to like squeeze on the skin, but they're
stop.
not big enough to actually break skin. They
I've never
can't
had
bite
one
you.
actually. I've never had
Yeah.
one actually do that though.
Um.
Oh, I still don't know what the spider was. So I at my dad's house again, but this is the upstairs floor. And it's lovely like pink tile. Think like 70s pink tile in the kitchen. This is relevant. So I'm a kid. I'm like running. You know how it is. You're playing outside. You don't want to go in and miss all the fun. And so I'm running in. I run in
There are
one
a
door.
lot of people who don't know what that's like,
Oh
actually.
God. Don't
But
remind
continue.
me.
But
Anyways,
continue.
guys, back in the day when
You dated yourself,
oh,
going outside, running around, not wanting to come back
not
in.
wanting to come back. You don't come
You
back until it's
you
night.
dated, yeah, yeah. Don't come back until the street lights come on.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
dated yourself for sure.
Anyways, well, the nostalgia. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I come in and I am running. I'm like, oh, so I come in one door and I'm running to the bathroom. And for whatever reason, I see a black spot on the floor and I just, you're in it. And so I just jump over it and I go to the bathroom. And then I'm coming back and I jump over it again and like ready to get back outside. And something in my brain was like, why are you jumping over a tiny, it was like this big on the floor. And then in my brain, I was like, oh, I don't know, but maybe I should pick that up. And I look back and I'm like, what is that? It was about this big. It was so cute, but it looked like a tarantula. It was this furry, gray silver, black looking tarantula thing, but it had yellow on it. It had a yellow circle on its little butt and it had yellow rings on its legs. And I'm staring at this thing and I'm like, this looks poisonous. Where the hell did this come from? I don't even know what this is. I have never been able to find it anywhere. And it's not, I don't think it's native to Maryland, but it was just one of those weird experiences. And I called my dad and I was like, you have to come look at this spider. He goes, oh, just squish it. And I'm like, no, like, also, look how cool this is. I don't remember what he ended up doing. I hope he didn't kill it, but maybe he took it out. I'm just going to remember it as he took it outside. But he even looked at it and he goes, what the heck is that? So that's my cool spider story.
Spiders are indeed very, very cool. If there was one animal that you could bring back, what would it be?
Oh, I think woolly mammoths would be really cool. What I was going to say
They're
earlier,
already working on that one.
I know. What I am not for ever under no circumstance is any of the ocean creatures. Like you want to talk about scary and can get out of hand. Can you imagine them trying to bring back one of those the giant sharks or whatever they're called and it just starts eating our ships? Imagine when we could probably just shoot a missile at it, but no, mammoth I think would be cool. I feel like I'm so uneducated when it comes to knowing the full expanse of the creatures that we lost.
To be honest, it's just not of interest to me. But not to say that it's not interesting.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna work off of fantasy,
a dragon.
and that was
I
gonna
would
be
want to.
mine.
Yeah.
That was gonna be mine. I'm gonna work off of fantasy, and there are a bunch of ancient texts that speak of them. You
Uh-huh.
know, we would have
Throughout the entire history.
we would have more than likely found like evidence that they existed, but who knows? Maybe in the future we do, however unlikely it is. There's always the 0.000000001% chance that we do come across evidence, and we can do that. But that would be terrifying. But it would also be amazing. I would have to wonder, do they also look like giant chickens? Because that's all I think about with dinosaurs now. Anytime I think of a dinosaur, and just birds in general, like, have I ever sent you that video of a bird singing or making its like calls slowed down?
No. I don't think so. I mean, it
You
sounds familiar.
You should look that up. Everybody should look that up. If ever you wanted like it's not proof, but if ever you wanted to see what dinosaurs could sound like, that would be the video. Look for bird calls slowed down, or not bird calls, birds singing slowed down.
Or
When
calls.
they slow down the sounds of it, it sounds frightening, but also like how we imagine dinosaurs.
Mm,
Like, but it also sounds like eerie, and sounds like, oh man, if there was a thing like this out there, bro,
mhm.
that would be a little rough. Um, yeah, I can only think of dinosaurs as giant bird-like creatures now. So
It's just so weird for like even seeing like you go to the Smithsonian museums, you see the replicas of the T-Rexes with the little arms. I'm like, I still feel like that's wrong.
I
I
can't
don't
I can't
know.
imagine them that way. I imagine them as chickens.
But even dragons, if you think about it, I saw a video where they're like, dragons, probably existed. And when you see, because they had all these pictures of dragons throughout the ages, right? Like even before medieval times, going through medieval times, and then even beyond, like how people were depicting them. And of course there's similarities, but the interesting thing to me was that they went from this giant thing to this super small, like bird-like creature. And so,
I would have to wonder if ever we discover or if ever there is something close to an aerial snake.
mm-hmm,
Cause like I mean I don't know anything about like old school dragons, but like I've heard the idea that they are like they were the ancient serpents of the skies,
uh-huh,
right? So I have to wonder if there's any kind of like species of snake that is flying that maybe we can envision as something being large. Like the idea that dragons are scaly, where does that come from? Like
right.
does that why is that a consistent idea? Like I've never seen furry dragons. I've never
Mhm.
seen slimy dragons. They've always been scaly. So I have to wonder if, some type of flying lizard, flying snake.
Well, we still have one. It's called the Chrysophilia, or the flying snake, or the paradise flying snake, if you've ever seen videos of it, where
Mm-mm.
it actually flies through the air. There's a it can manipulate its body to where it can suck in air or expand itself, and it like glides that way. It's really cool. I learned about it when I was younger, and remember thinking, I was like, these are modern day dragons. I was like, it's possible. They're
Oh,
real.
they look like snakes.
Because
I
they
don't
are.
know what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting snakes.
Oh, really?
But no, they look like
hmm
legit snakes.
But it's really cool if you look up a video on how they actually glide through the air. It all has to do with the way that they can contort their body. Um, Really wild stuff. I mean, snakes can do a whole lot of cool things like that. Or there's desert snakes
Oh,
that don't sink into the sand by the way that they are able to, I don't know, do their swishy movements.
I have seen videos of this snake
hmm
actually.
hmm
I have seen this. This isn't the first time that I've seen it. Okay.
Or
Yeah.
there's the snakes that are the water snakes, but in the island where the water snakes are typically found, there's the iguanas that have adapted to be in water. Like there's another dragonish like thing there. So I don't know. I They might have adapted the same
Yeah.
way. Like who knows?
All right. So wrapping up here, what let me think. What question do I have? We covered some interesting ideas here.
I have my question.
I think I have my question too. So my question here is, if you could take one trait, from ancient history, that we do not see today, and we could apply it to humans, what trait would it be? What would you genetically engineer your human with?
Can you give an example? Like
Sure.
what would you
Like
be?
if you were really interested in humans with like webbed feet, like if you really wanted mermaids and mermen, like web feeding gills,
Hmm.
like would you genetically engineer your own mermaids? Or what if you really wanted feathers? Or what if you're a degenerate like me and you want cat ears and a tail? You know, what what would you do?
So that's really funny. Cat ears and a tail. Don't you think you'd go crazy from hearing all the sounds that they hear? No way to turn it off.
That's not my problem. I just
That's not
want
your
cute. I
fault.
want cute cat girls.
But this is on you. Oh, I guess you did say to society. Okay. I would do wings. I would
You do
definitely
it.
do
Yeah, humans flying would be amazing. Yeah,
yeah. Can you imagine just no traffic?
yeah.
Um So mine is, as we go further down this road of bringing ancient things back, what do you think the first thing to be in a zoo is going to be? Because like John said, like I do agree with what you called out. There's no way you can introduce any of these into environments. Do I think that someone might try? Maybe. Or do I think that something's going to escape and then be integrated in some weird way and we're not going to be able to find it? Yeah. That's probably the more likely of the two, hopefully. But what do you think is the first thing that is ancient? Like we don't have it today and it wasn't like recently extinct to be in a zoo, like it's something you get to pay to go see.
Bring back the dodo.
The dodo? Actually, I think that's more plot. I mean, we have emus and we have what is it?
Actually,
Cassiaries. Cassiaries.
birds are scary, so don't do that. But
Have you looked up a cassiary though?
no, it's
Just
not.
do it. It's spelled, it's like CASS Cass CASSOWARIES. They are massive. And their beaks are about this big.
Oh no, that's what I imagine a dinosaur to look like. That's
Yes.
literally what I imagine a
Yes.
dinosaur to
So
look
when you
like.
say like, well, I guess the dodo birds are kind of small, but you'd probably pick like another pelican type bird for that. But cassowaries, or I think it's called cassowary, not cassiaries. Cassowaries. Cool. Well, guys, we really dived headfirst face down into our topics today
We
and all
we
sorts
really
of amazing
did.
headfirst face down into the past, just all the way. Hope you guys enjoyed, but until next time, keep questioning your constructs and form your own opinions, form your own constructs. Don't let it just be formed by external information. I mean, you saw John and I both did some additional research on this
And
topic.
not only that, we both came in with the same feelings, right? Like
Yeah,
we both came in. Like when I first had that conversation with my mom, it was holy crap,
yeah,
dire wolves are back, baby.
yeah.
Like
It happened for a split second for me. I was like,
Game
that's cool. I was like, and probably not. Let's read.
Game of Thrones, let's go. But yeah, I hope everybody has a good one, and ancient history is cool. Take a look at it, see what you can see what you can find, ask questions, figure out what can be applied from all of that to here. And I hope everybody's doing well out there. Turbulent times, but I hope you're all enjoying life.
Yes, absolutely. And, if life is too much, just dive head first, face down into a topic of interest and pretend the world doesn't exist for a little. All right, guys, have a good
Alrighty,
one.
bye.
Bye.